Kate Bush released her fourth solo album, The Dreaming, in 1982 to critical and commercial disaster. Yes, I swear this video is about Silent Hill 2. Bear with me, bear with me. Until then, she'd been known for quirky, whimsical art pop songs like Wuthering Heights and Babushka. And while, sure, she was always known for being a bit unconventional and unique, they were all very listenable. Enter Sat in Your Lap, the explosively abrasive lead single to her first fully self-produced album. Up until this point, Kate's work would mostly begin development starting with the melody of the song, but The Dreaming saw her focus first on the rhythm and percussion, and knowing Kate, she wasn't just gonna settle down for any normal drum beat now, was she? Using a Fairlight CMI synthesizer to sample normal sounds, crunch them up, and then spit them back out all over the place, Kate pushed her existing maximalist tendencies to the brink of overload. The album is definitely not for everyone. Lord knows it took me long enough to get into it. And it covers some pretty bizarre and unusual topics, from Vietnamese soldiers using their sense of smell to find Americans during the Vietnam War, a group of amateur criminals trying to pull off a bank heist, and Houdini being passed the key to his escape from a kiss from his wife. Despite the horrifying sounds and often unsettling or downright creepy topics Kate covers, she was not one to scare easily. In fact, she stated that the last track on the album, Get Out of My House, was based on the only book that had ever really frightened her. One book that would go on to inspire countless musicians, filmmakers, and game producers right up to this day. A little book by Stephen King called The Shining. It's no secret that Stephen King's works were a major influence for the Silent Hill series. Streets are named after authors, with Bachman Road a nod to Stephen King's pseudonym Richard Bachman, and there are even Easter eggs hidden throughout that reference his many works, including posters for his books and their film adaptations. The Shining itself has a few references in the games, such as Red Room posted in blood on a wall, and this torn up poster of Jack smashing through the bathroom door. The similarities run deeper than just the presence of a big scary hotel though. That's right. So, while we're both here, shall I show you to your room? Just a practical point here before I start. I will be focusing mostly on the book version of The Shining, rather than Stanley Kubrick's adaptation, although for obvious reasons I'll be using scenes from the film for the video. To get everyone up to speed, Silent Hill 2, the 2001 PS2 game by Konami, is a psychological survival horror game that is considered one of the best. And before I played it for the first time about a year ago, I had no idea what was about to hit me. I had just finished the first one, which I already thought was pretty incredible, but wow, I was not prepared for how magnificently subtle and intricate the story was going to be in Silent Hill 2, and I've honestly been obsessed ever since. For a brief introduction to those perhaps not in the know, and spoilers obviously, Silent Hill 2 starts with our character James Sutherland arriving in Silent Hill, having received a letter from his wife Mary inviting him to come to their special place, a wink, despite her having passed away 3 years ago of an incurable disease. As he heads into the town, which is as foggy as a school disco with a malfunctioning smoke machine, he stumbles upon grotesque enemies, troubled individuals, naughty nurses, more nurses, yes, the lay sister, decaying nightmarish visions, massive vacuous holes in the ground, and a dog controlling the whole thing. Oh wait, I don't think that's supposed to be canon. Two characters in particular constantly follow James around the town, Maria and Pyramid Head. Maria, who looks exactly like James's wife Mary, but super sexy and flirty, spends a reasonable amount of time alongside James. Let her slink on over, she knows what she's doing. And despite dying 2 or 3 times over the course of the game, always seemingly pops up again somewhere else in the town. Pyramid Head, on the other hand, or more accurately, Red Pyramid Thing, stalks James around Silent Hill, appearing at the most unfortuitous times to attack James, Maria, or both James and Maria at the same time. Two other tortured souls also walk the streets of Silent Hill. Angela, a suicidal young woman who, after facing years of abuse from her father and brother, murders the pair with the same bloody knife and comes to Silent Hill in search of her mother. And Eddie, an insecure, overweight guy who is constantly bullied by those around him, has a difficult relationship with food, and snapped back at a bully by killing his dog and shooting him in the knee. One of the only truly innocent characters is a young girl, Laura, who would visit Mary at the hospital after James couldn't bear seeing his decaying wife any longer. Meanwhile, The Shining, published in 1977 by Stephen King, explores the experience of the Torrances, a family of Jack and Wendy Torrance and their 5-year-old son Danny, as they act as caretakers for the Overlook Hotel as it closes for the winter season. However, as the days go by and the snowfall gets more severe, tensions rise and weird starts to go down. Danny has a special mind ability called The Shining, as revealed by the similarly powered cook Dick Halloran. Danny sees horrifying visions around the hotel, including one of a decaying woman climbing out of a bathtub to get to him. Meanwhile, Jack, who is an alcoholic and has previously broken Danny's arm in a fit of rage, tries to settle down to write a play, but progressively becomes more unstable and violent. There are some obvious themes that run through both The Shining and Silent Hill 2, the biggest being a location that is spiritually connected to the characters that inhabit it. In The Shining, the Overlook Hotel itself tries to take over the minds of the Torrances. Because of Danny's psychic powers, the effect of the hotel is magnified, and after it abandoned trying to take over Danny, the Overlook shifts its gaze to Jack, driving him to frustration and anger until he eventually snaps and turns violent toward his wife and child. Silent Hill, on the other hand, isn't so much possessed itself, but instead finds itself the base of a cult trying to resurrect a god, and as a result, people find themselves drawn to it, either due to unforeseen spiritual connection or from a repressed guilty conscience. What happened to those individuals once there is not down to the town, which acts more as a neutral place where feelings are explored. I guess a bit like therapy then? Whereas it's clear that the Overlook Hotel is brimming with evil, trying its best to possess those who dare stay for too long a time. The hotel thrives on violence and anger, whereas Silent Hill does not. It is simply the stage to the drama played out by troubled souls. Much like a theatre, it provides actors, sets and props where they are required. But whether or not these places, people or things are real or simply in the imagination of those who experience them is ultimately not clear to the player. For example, Maria is a creation from James's mind, being an idealized sexual version of Mary. But what about Heaven's Night, the club she works at? Eagle-eyed players may spot posters for the strip club at the very first location in the game. Is there also a real Maria? Why would she look exactly like Mary, even on the posters, if she's just a projection of James's inner psyche? Is she made up entirely? The exact line between being physically real and just imaginary is blurry, where it's possible to be both at once.
I'm here for you, James. See? I'm real.
That sounds like what someone who isn't real would say.
Near the end of the game, James reaches the Lakeview Hotel, the special place where he and Mary stayed a few years ago prior when visiting Silent Hill. He arrives to find the hotel just as he remembered, but devoid of life. Besides a few monstrous visions that walk its empty corridors, of course. He slowly but surely makes his way to their hotel room, where he finds a VHS player and finally learns the truth about what he did. Spoilers! Turns out Mary didn't die 3 years ago, and instead James just couldn't bear looking at her because of her illness, and so suffocated her with a pillow, and it's highly possible she's actually in the boot of his car at the start of the game. The hotel around him transforms from the eerily quiet hotel to a burnt-out, damp husk, the reality of the physical space around him. It turns out the hotel was completely burnt down after the pair stayed there previously, but as James was expecting to find the hotel as he remembered, complete with Mary waiting for him in room 312, Silent Hill provided him with a mostly pristine but monster-filled version, the demons in his mind, battling with his desires to repress all memory of him killing Mary. Very much in the same way, the Overlook Hotel supplies the characters with their own visions, some of which cross the boundary from the imagined to reality, fueling the tension between the three. The old, decaying woman that Danny sees grabs his throat, and when bruises are clearly visible on Danny's neck the next morning, Wendy naturally assumes Jack has lost control and snapped at Danny. Elsewhere, Jack exterminates a swarm of wasps and gives the empty nest to Danny to examine. Wendy, who has a natural shine with Danny, senses something is wrong, and a whole swarm reveals itself from the dead nest and attacks Danny. Stephen King is great at writing in a way where you don't fully know if what's happening on the page is really happening or if it's just in the mind of the characters. One great example of this is the hedge maze animals moving out of the corner of Jack's eye. Did they really move? Surely not. Topiary creatures can't move. Until later on, when they cross from something seen out of the corner of an eye into real, threatening creatures. Or do they? Could this still all be the result of some kind of overthinking in the minds of our oh-so-unreliable and troubled Torrances? Hotels provide a very specific kind of fear and anticipation. Their corridors provide one of the ultimate liminal spaces, a tunnel in time and space that only carries you from where you have come from to a place of rest. Personally, it almost feels wrong to be just standing around in a hotel corridor. I don't know why. The use of hotel corridors makes it especially horrifying in both The Shining and Silent Hill 2's final chapter, where the long hallways are filled with twisted creations of the imagination, and bedrooms that could contain anything beyond their flimsy wooden doors. Both works also have specific rooms that are mythologized in some way. Silent Hill 2 has room 312, behind which James is expecting to finally find the reason he is even in this town in the first place. And in The Shining, room 217, or 237 in the film, shares a special psychological connection with Danny, behind which the rotting corpse of Lorraine Massey waits. When you slowly make your way up the floors of the hotel in Silent Hill 2, it's like with each room number you get closer and closer to reaching your destination and finding out the truth. It fills the player with a sense of excitement but also dread. One, because finding the secret means the game will be over sooner, but also two, because you don't know truly what lies behind the door. James surely also feels the same way, excited at potentially finding his wife, but also dread at the idea of what he will actually find, knowing full well that his wife is dead. In The Shining, Stephen King does the plot-wise version of counting down the room numbers. He plants seeds throughout the story that will grow over time and eventually hit the players like a train. The biggest foreshadowing is the literal boiler ready to explode. Lightly dropped in early in the book, ready to fully ignite when Jack is taken over by the hotel and forgets his key task. Don't forget to depressurize the boiler. In that final song of the album, Get Out of My House, Kate Bush takes the ideas and themes of The Shining and transforms it into the ultimate story of someone locked inside their head, fighting to keep everyone out. In it, the narrator escapes further and further into the house, locking doors as she goes, but forever being pursued by a powerful entity trying to break in and reach her. Not only is it a powerful song from a woman's perspective of being chased by an unknown and unseen figure, but the house also represents a person who's been hurt, putting up shutters to keep everything and everyone out. Much like in both Silent Hill 2 and The Shining, supernatural transformations occur. When the pursuer reaches the narrator, she turns into a bird to simply fly away, but the attacker becomes a powerful wind, enough to keep her from escaping. In a last resort, the narrator finally learns to face her fears, transforming into a mule, standing steadfast against the gusts, staring at it right in the eye and scaring it away for good. The idea of someone doing something that isn't necessarily what's best for them, like our narrator hiding away in her house, is something that repeatedly comes up in both The Shining and Silent Hill 2, which are both dripping with characters making bad decisions and then ending up hurting themselves or those closest to them. James is basically sabotaging himself by hanging out and talking to Maria, and if you end up going down the ending with her, James ends up choosing the temptation of Maria over the knowledge that he was responsible for Mary's death. But later on, we see Maria cough, starting the whole process all over again. And thinking back to all the enemies, a lot of them are extremely over-sexualized, from the booby nurses wearing skimpy nurse Halloween costumes and sexy mannequin legs, much sexier than legs from Toy Story, am I right? Representing James's unmet sexual desires with the bedridden Mary. Keeping in mind James's rather selfish, repulsed attitude towards Mary's visual appearance, the enemies throughout are bloody, disfigured, or just really gross. His brain fighting between what he wants from Mary Mary and what he sees in his wife's deceased state. Throughout the playthrough, the best way of making sure they don't come back is by kicking them while they're down. Literally killing them while they're lying down. Remind you of anything, James? Later on in the game, after taking on Angela's nightmare vision of a stretchy fabric monster caught in the bed frame, which here is representing her sexually abusive father, James then comes across multiples of this creature throughout the hotel. It's almost like his brain was thinking, oh, actually, you know what's an even better substitute for your dying wife? This manky humanoid bedsheet stretched between a bed frame. Better start stamping on it. Every time James comes across an enemy, he is essentially killing Mary over and over without even realizing it. Hell, James is also betraying the viewer. We're forced to play with good intentions as someone who killed his wife. He's not the blank slate we imagine the main character of a game like this should be. The Shining is also not without a bit of betrayal and sabotage itself. The biggest, of course, being Jack unwittingly turning on his family. When they consider using the ski sled to escape the hotel before it's too late, Jack breaks vital components to the vehicle in a fit of rage. The hotel is also oh so complicit with assisting Jack in his betrayal. The hotel's alcohol supplies have been completely drained before the Torrances settle in for the winter, but the Overlook just can't help but supply Jack with a butler to unlock the door of the cupboard Wendy locked him in. The hotel then throws him a party, filled to the brim with music, beautiful people, and of course, a fully stocked bar with every spirit he could wish for. Despite there being no alcohol in the hotel before, Jack gets visibly drunk, and I don't think I need to say any more. What do people think about when they think of The Shining? They remember Red Room, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, and here's Johnny. But what is it that is really at the heart of this story? It's family, right? I mean, Wendy isn't being chased around by some random guy with a croquet mallet, which, don't get me wrong, of course would be absolutely f***ing terrifying, but she's being chased by her alcoholic husband, who's already previously hit his child, and for all Wendy knows, has done so again after finding Danny covered in bruises. She's scared not only for her and Danny's lives, but also for her husband, who is being taken over by the hotel. In the first Silent Hill, Harry Mason is looking for his daughter Cheryl, who eventually we learn is really just a secondary host of Alessa. After being regenerated as a baby, Alessa/Cheryl returns to Harry's care, and his family is somewhat complete once more. I mean, his wife is still dead, but whatever. Silent Hill 2's family, on the other hand, consists of James and Mary, and near the end of their story, they're in this complex push and pull, where James can no longer stand being around her due to her depreciating state, and wants the old Mary back. And Mary hates him when he's around due to his obvious disgust, but becomes broken when he's gone. While not a direct part of the family, Laura acts as a surrogate or placeholder child for Cheryl, representing the innocent side compared to James's repressed sexuality. It's later revealed to us in Mary's letter that she was planning on adopting Laura, if or when she ever got out of hospital. This was probably more of a token gesture from Mary because she was never going to get better, but after James abandons her due to her illness, Laura does kind of become a new family member to Mary, seeing as she has no one else left. Maria also shows a strong draw to follow Laura throughout the town, with Mary's memories coming back to the forefront. It's perhaps also relevant or important that this nuclear family of father, mother and child never fully gets to come together, with one member always missing from the equation. I think it's the combination of family issues and the paranormal that makes both Silent Hill 2 and The Shining stand out among the rest of the psychological horror sphere. Neither shy away from seriously dark topics, including alcoholism, domestic and sexual abuse, betrayal, and death. The strange and sinister elements to both are used in a way that doesn't distract from or mask the deeper horrors that lie within, but instead highlighting the incongruous way in which our main characters behave to their families. Experiencing Silent Hill 2 changed my life in a way. While I've always been of the opinion that games can be an art form, I've never been moved before by a video game in such a way. If you haven't played it, do. You might just find that you start looking at everything just a little bit differently.
The f is this?